Yes, thank you.
You've been watching The World Today with Mariam Mashiri. Stay with us. The Context with my wonderful colleague Ben Brown is coming up in a few minutes, so don't go anywhere. Bye-bye.
Hello, I'm Ben Brown and you are watching The Context on BBC News.
They have to do that in accordance with international humanitarian law, protect civilian lives, and sadly too many civilians have already lost their lives, get more aid into Gaza. That's what we've consistently called for.
Clearly that these vehicles were carrying humanitarian aid workers. This is why we want answers really from the Israeli government.
Humanitarians and civilians should never be paying the consequences of war. This is a basic principle of humanity.
The claim of Israel, of the Israeli army, that there was no intention, that it was a mistake, that it was by chance, all those sounds now quite ridiculous.
Pressure on Israel grows after 7 aid workers were killed in an Israeli airstrike, and it forces aid agencies to halt their work in the region. Also tonight we'll have the latest from Taiwan after a 7.4 magnitude earthquake hit the island, the strongest in 25 years. More than 100 people are still trapped tonight in the rubble. NATO leaders descend on Brussels for a key summit with support for Ukraine, a central topic of their conversation. The British Foreign Secretary, Lord Cameron, has called on members to ensure they spend at least 2% of their gross domestic product on defence. And we'll be live in the capital of Haiti, where the state of emergency set to lapse today. There are concerns that an already dangerous situation there could spiral out of control again. Well, we start in the Middle East, and Israel is under growing international pressure after the deaths of those 7 aid workers, 3 of them British, killed in an Israeli airstrike in Gaza. President Joe Biden has said he is outraged and heartbroken by what happened. The British Foreign Secretary, Lord Cameron, called it a dreadful event, and he paid tribute to those who were killed, saying that they were brave humanitarian workers. Lord Dubs, very grateful to you for your time. Thank you for being with us on BBC News. And we're going to take a short break now, but do stay with us around the world and across the UK. This is BBC News. Welcome back. Let us take a closer look now at the challenges that are facing humanitarian agencies in Gaza after the deaths of those 7 aid workers on Monday in Israeli airstrikes. Well, the United Nations has been warning for weeks of potential famine in Gaza. But now there are concerns from a number of aid agencies about how to keep providing relief supplies safely and to keep their staff in Gaza safe. Well, Muslim Aid is one group that is trying to get aid into Gaza. Let's talk to Muslim Aid's CEO, Khalid Javid, who joins us now from the Egyptian side of the Rafah border. Thank you very much for being with us. Well, after these latest deaths of aid workers, is that going to deter you from working in Gaza? The latest there from Taiwan. Now, don't forget you can get in touch with me and some of the team on the social media site X. I'm at Ben Brown, BBC. Hello, I am Ben Brown and you are watching The Context here on BBC News. The Metropolitan Police says that 3 suspects left the UK just hours after an Iranian journalist was stabbed in London. Well, we'll have much more on that story in just a few minutes, but first it is time for the sport, and a full roundup comes from the BBC Sports Centre and Tulson.
Ben, thank you very much indeed. There are 3 matches in the Premier League at present, with Manchester City at home to Aston Villa in the late game. That's been underway. So 3 games in the Premier League and also cup action across Germany, Italy and of course France. And you can head to the BBC Sport website for all the latest on that. But that, Ben, is all your sport for now.
All right, Tulson, thank you very much indeed. Well, as promised, let us turn now to that investigation into the stabbing of an Iranian journalist in London last week. Puriya Zarati, who works for the UK-based Persian language TV channel Iran International, was attacked outside his home. Now, around the world and across the UK, this is BBC News. Now, this week, it is the 75th birthday of NATO, the military alliance founded in the wake of the Second World War. Well, it won't be an entirely happy birthday. NATO foreign ministers have been meeting in Brussels, considering how to guarantee long-term arms supplies for Ukraine, even if Donald Trump returns to the White House and tries to cut those arms supplies off.
It's going to happen, of course.
Thank you so much, Inna Sovson there, Ukrainian Member of Parliament, joining us there from Kyiv. You're watching BBC News. Hello, I'm Ben Brown, and you are watching The Context here on BBC News.
They have to do that in accordance with international humanitarian law, protect civilian lives, and sadly too many civilians have already lost their lives, get more aid into Gaza. That's what we've consistently called for.
Clearly that these vehicles were carrying humanitarian aid workers. This is why we want answers really from the Israeli government.
Humanitarians and civilians should never be paying the consequences of war. This is a basic principle of humanity.
The claim of Israel, of the Israeli army, that there was no intention, that it was a mistake, that it was by chance, all those sounds now quite ridiculous.
Well, discussing what's happening in the Middle East tonight and many other stories, our panel, Caroline Flint, former Labour Cabinet Minister, and Kurt Bardella, Republican rising star turned Democratic strategist. And first, our latest headlines here on BBC News. And the bodies of 6 foreign aid workers killed in Israeli drone strikes in Gaza have now been taken to Egypt as international condemnation grows over the attack on their aid convoy. The head of the Israeli military has said it was a grave mistake due to misidentification. An investigation is now underway. More than 100 people are missing in road tunnels and mines following a powerful earthquake in Taiwan. At least 9 people are now known to have been killed and more than 1,000 injured. It was the island's most powerful earthquake for more than a quarter of a century. A proposal put forward by the NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg for a €100 billion 5-year fund for Ukraine has met with a mixed response at NATO talks in Brussels. The long-term military aid plan was welcomed by Ukraine's allies, such as Poland and the Baltic states, but there's reported to have been some scepticism amongst other nations. A state of emergency in Haiti is due to end today, with the country still in a state of limbo after the Prime Minister was forced to resign, leaving an interim government in place. Businesses are still being attacked by gangs in the capital Port-au-Prince every day, and access to hospitals is dire, resulting in tens of thousands of people fleeing to rural areas. Well, we begin in the Middle East, where Israel is now under growing international pressure over the deaths of 7 aid workers, 3 of them British, killed in those Israeli airstrikes on Gaza. President Biden has said he's outraged and heartbroken by what happened. The British Foreign Secretary, Lord Cameron, has called it a dreadful event. OK, thank you very much, Kurt and Caroline. Much more to come from both of you. But for the moment, around the world and across the UK, this is BBC News. Now, NATO foreign ministers meeting in Brussels have been considering how to guarantee long-term arms supplies for Ukraine, even following the potential return of Donald Trump to the White House, who has talked about ending those arms supplies to Ukraine. Well, at the gathering, marking the alliance's 75th birthday, NATO chief Jens Stoltenberg proposed the idea of a €100 billion fund to help Ukraine defend itself against Russia over the long term, the next 5 years. And now it's a plan that is seen by some as a way of Trump-proofing aid for Ukraine. Let's have a listen to what Mr. Stoltenberg had to say in Brussels. We certainly will. All right, Caroline Flint and Kurt Bardella. For the moment, thank you very much indeed. We'll be back with you very shortly. Do stay with us. Hello again, I am Ben Brown and you are watching The Context here on BBC News. We're going to be talking about Hollywood's gender pay gap very shortly, with Kirsten Dunst admitting she didn't even think to ask for equal pay when she was an up-and-coming star. Now, President Joe Biden has hailed progress by his administration in bringing down the cost of healthcare for Americans. Last month, 3 of the 4 manufacturers of asthma drugs decided to cap costs at $35 per inhaler. Well, the White House says asthma affects 27 million Americans. All right, well said, Kurt. Thank you very much indeed. Back with you in a moment. I just want to bring a line of breaking news from the Reuters news agency about Donald Trump, actually. And it is that a judge in New York has denied Donald Trump's attempt to delay his trial that's scheduled for April the 15th on charges stemming from hush money allegedly paid to an adult movie star until the US Supreme Court reviews his claim to presidential immunity in a separate criminal case. More on that here on BBC News around the world and across the UK. You're watching BBC News. Right, now it is time for the panel. So let's go back to Caroline and Kurt, because this is the part of the programme where the panellists get to bring their topics, their subjects to our show. Caroline Flint and Kurt Bardella are with us once again. Caroline, why don't we start with you? What have you got for us? Well, let's see whether November's presidential election is a wrestling match. Kurt Bardella, thank you very much indeed. And also Caroline Flint, former Labour Cabinet Minister, many thanks for talking through some of the key issues and stories of the day, and some lighter moments too. Thank you very much, both of you. And you've been watching BBC News.
Hello from the BBC Sports Centre. I'm Tulson Tollett. We'll start with football. Arsenal have moved back to the top of the Premier League above Liverpool after a 2-0 win at home to relegation-threatened Luton Town. Everything else the website, of course, but that is all your sport for now.
Hello there. The coldest, wettest weather today was across Scotland.